Hey there, dive buddies, and welcome to the show. During this podcast episode, I'm going to be discussing the pilot whale grinds or slaughters conducted in the Faroe Islands with an activist that caught my attention some months ago. I like his reporting style because he appears to subdue the expected emotional attachment that all too often overshadows the point being made. I'm not saying that the passion isn't apparent, it most certainly is. However, it is kept under control so that his reporting is on point, precise, balanced, and well received. He joins me now from his home nation, Norway, Samuel Rostøl. Welcome to the show, buddy. How's your quarantine going?
Thank you. I actually just came out of quarantine yesterday after a negative test, so I'm all good and ready to go.
Awesome, awesome. I thought you were going to be looking at a couple of weeks of sat in your shed.
Yeah, it used to be 10 days, but just a few weeks ago they cut it down to 3 days if you can show a positive or a negative, but it's a very positive
Yeah,
test result. So now I'm good. I can go out and be
happy days.
yeah, happy days.
Good on you.
Thanks.
So just for those people that don't know you, I'll just expand on the intro there. That Samuel caught my attention because of the grind in the Faroe Islands, which we'll get to in a bit. Um, but obviously, once someone catches my attention, then I have a little dig around on Facebook and all that kind of stuff. And Samuel's well, kind of gone all on or all cards in on caring for animals and welfare. And I see he's got quite a healthy following on Patreon now, or Patreon. How do you say it? Is it Patreon?
I think
Patreon.
I think it's Patreon.
Yeah, yeah. But can you backfill us a bit, especially for myself? What were you doing before this change in events of your life, and why?
For sure. I come from a small town in Norway, where I'm just a regular small town boy, really. But I have always been like very protective against or around the nature and around animals. I've always been very caring. I was a kid that lifted like small beetles and bugs out of the way so that no bikes would run over them. Um, and then became an adult and I had to do regular life. So I studied multimedia programming and I worked as a programmer for a few years. Hated it. Went traveling, came back, became a nurse. And during the nurse studies, I found my passion, which is for fighting for the animals. Um,
Yeah.
so after a few years as a nurse, I just decided, well, this is not where my passion lies. My passion lies with the animals
Mm.
and there are so many people fighting for humans on different levels but the animals has so few, so that's where I wanted to put my focus. So since February this year, I've become a full-time activist, but I've been so in previous times as well, for a year or so, but now I'm going all in, and thanks to both Patreon and supporters on social media, I get to do that with all my heart and all my time and all my passion. So I'm very very grateful for that.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's clear that you've got quite a good following and you're doing some great work. Like I say, I've been picking through the weeds to see what you've done in the past, and
Well, I'm trying my best to do as good job as possible. Oh, I'm sorry, you cut out there, so I thought you asked a question.
that's okay. Ah, you're okay. So, how did it come about that you headed down to the Faroe Islands? Is it something that's been on your radar for a while?
Well, I've been a supporter of Sea Shepherd's work for many, many years, and I've always been
Mm.
very, very happy about what they do and how they work. At least to some extent, there was always some things that I don't agree with, but that's always the case.
Yeah.
So when they reached out to me and asked if I wanted to join in this year's campaign, and we hadn't worked together before, it was an automated yes for me. I was really happy to be able to do that. And
Mm.
first, I was asked to join for 2 weeks, and then they expanded to 4 weeks, and in the end, it became 2.5 months in total. Um, and it was just me being happy to do some hands-on work as I do back home anyway, but on a different matter and with a different team behind you. Having
Mm.
such a team as Sea Shepherd behind your back when you do work like this, it makes it really well. You can make a lot bigger impact because of the following that they have than with a mere
Mm.
following that I have. Um, and I think that we have made a difference this year, like the documentations that we've been able to do, and the events that has happened. I think, like we were seeing right now, that it's really making an impact that we're there. So I'm proud and happy to be a part of that.
Yeah, as you should be.
Yeah.
Now, I just want to pick up on that. So you got invited by Sea Shepherd to go join their campaign down there. I actually thought it was Sea Shepherd seeing the great stuff you were doing and voicing what you were doing. So that just speaks in volumes the work or the output that you've configured. I got it completely the wrong way around in my head.
Oh well, to be completely honest, like it was a volunteer that I've met before, and who was there last year, who just said that I
Hmm.
could be a valuable asset to this year's campaign,
Mm.
and so I think it was. I wouldn't go as far as to say there was the big dogs of Sea Shepherd that invited me, but it was one of last year's volunteers. So I don't know if you got it the
But
wrong way around, but I was happy to be there at least.
yeah, no, I think I did get it the wrong way around. You got an invite from Sea Shepherd, and I thought you'd gone down there on your own, and Sea Shepherd had picked up on the good work that you've been doing.
Yeah, no.
So you know that's what I'm trying to say is that it just shows the good work that you have been doing because you've effectively been the voice and the eyes of what's going on in the Faroe Islands, as far as I can see
Yeah, I've
through
been
allowing to
one of
do
them
so.
for sure, and I'm like we were a team there every like all through the summer, and I just
Mm,
got to be one of the people that was in front of the camera a few times, but we were
yeah.
always like two or three people at the very least. Um,
Okay.
so yeah,
Okay.
I wasn't
And
alone,
what's
thankfully.
yeah. So um, what was the idea of being there? Was it to purely to record the activities or to integrate, to question, to interfere? What was the objectives?
The idea was actually quite simple. Previous years, Sea Shepherd has been more, you could say, more visible. And in
Mm,
2014, they had a big campaign with like boats and I think a couple of hundred activists, and they were actually trying to stop the whale hunting. Um, After that, the Faroese passed quite a lot of laws restricting that kind of operation. So now we're just basically allowed to document. So my task this year was to document and to try to start conversations with the locals, speaking with them about the Grind and about everything that happens, why it happens, and why they still do it. So when I wasn't at a Grind, which happened quite randomly because a Grind happens when a pod of whale is like seen somewhere and then they start to hunt.
mhm,
But when I wasn't doing that, which was most of the time, I would try to start conversations and have conversations with locals and meet with them and see
mm,
why they did what they did, what they thought about it, what they thought about the future of the Grind, and so forth. And the hope
mm,
was, of course, that I don't have to come back. That the Faroese people themselves will take the battle on, so to say, because it's
mm.
always the best if local activists fight the cause.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm.
So, just outline for those people that may be listening that are possibly unaware of what's going on in the Faroe Islands. What exactly is a grind, and why does it go on? Why does it occur?
Well, a grind is, or a Grindadrop, as they call it in the Faroe Islands, is when a pod of grind whales or pilot whales are spotted like along the coast of the Faroe Islands. They're called for a grindabud, which means that um, all the locals will jump into their boats and chase that pod of whales into the nearby bay and towards a slaughter beach. On that beach, a group of people will be waiting with ropes and hooks. So when the whales are chased close enough to the beach, they will run out into the ocean, put those hooks or try to put those hooks into the blowing holes or the breathing holes of the dolphins and pull them
Mm,
with force onto land and then cut them open, basically. So the method they use for this is they have like a spear-like weapon that they cut into the spinal cord of these animals to immobilize them, and then they cut their head open
mm,
with a knife so that they bleed out or die from blood loss to their brain. So one of the ways this works is when they use the motorboats or the boats, they try to make a lot of sound behind the animals, so that for them who of course they use sonars to navigate, they just see a big like sound wall behind them. So the only way they can move is in the direction that the hunters want them to go.
Mm.
And this hunt can be um, hours long. One of the longest I saw was about 4 hours, and they were chased around like 35 something kilometers. And and I got to film parts of it, especially the chase, where you can see how all the whales come up for air with like tens and tens of boats behind them chasing them towards land. Um, and that was one of my tasks. I was flying a drone, so I got to fly a drone quite a lot and film these events from different perspectives than that has been seen before, which also
Yeah.
resulted in quite a lot of tension and some aggression towards me. But that is the basic
Yeah.
gist of a Grindadrop. And afterwards, they pull the whales to the nearby harbor, where they open the animals
Mhm.
up and then cut them out and share them between the hunters and the people who participated primarily. And if
Okay.
there's enough left for
And
everybody else, then they can share it up with the locals as well.
okay. And the main reason that this continues, or the main excuse, should we say, is that it's historically it's a tradition. Is that correct?
Well, they would argue that the main reason why it continues is because they use the whales for food.
Okay.
So their point of view is that we're eating them, and it's good food for us. Um, but if you look at their own like health ministries recommendations, they actually recommend to restrict the consumption of these whales quite a lot. The recommendation right now is about 300 grams per adult per month. So the
Okay.
maximum recommended intake is basically somewhere along the line of like 300 pilot whales a year. And now, of course, this year the hunt has been twice that, plus all those white-sided dolphins that was slaughtered, well, almost a month ago.
Yeah. Yeah. What was that? 1,184 or 48?
Yeah,
Can't remember.
1,428 was the total number.
428.
And that's only
Yeah.
the counted. Usually, there's quite a lot of pregnant whales or dolphins as well, and the
Mm.
fetuses just die inside their mother's womb, and they're never counted. They're just discarded because they don't eat them.
Mm. Yeah. There was it your aerial footage that had the fishermen cutting out dolphins
Yeah,
from pregnant mum and just chucking them in the bin?
yep. That was actually quite an
Yeah.
interesting experience in itself. We were there throughout the night. The hunt happened just around midnight. So we stayed with the slaughter and the picking up of the animals all through the morning, and we noticed that there were
Mm.
two dolphins or pilot whales that they didn't cut up, and their bellies were kind of like how do you say, they were protruding. So we understood that there was something
Yeah.
in there, of course, being then pregnant dolphins. So we stayed around hoping to be able to film this, but they never did as long as we were there. So then
Mm.
we figured out that we just leave and let them be. And when we came just around the corner, we threw up the drone and flew back and caught them just in the act of removing the dead fetus. So we
Mm.
so they were
It's. I mean, it is graphic, and I'm sure a few people might have turned off from the podcast by now because it's stomach churning just to think about. But it's a topic that has to be brought into the limelight and has to be exposed because I think I did a little Google a few days ago. I think there's maybe only a million longfin pilot whales left in the world that we know of.
yeah,
And
the numbers aren't that, no, we don't really actually know the numbers. What we have seen
yeah,
is a steady decline in the pod sizes over the last
okay,
few decades. When we Because the Faroese are very, very good at keeping count on the number of pilot whales that they kill and consume. So what you can
Mm,
see is for every hunt, there is a number of, like the number of whales in the pod is always counted. So
mm,
from the 80s to now, the number of whales in one pod that they do capture has been reduced to about half the sizes.
yeah,
So that doesn't really tell us too much about the total population, but it does give an indication of that there's something happening.
yeah. There's got to be a bit. There's got to be imbalance there, isn't there? Because you know the how, you know, the offspring can still take milk from the mother until they're into their early teens years. They're not breeding every year and just popping out new babies that are going to grow to full size animals overnight. So it's it's definitely going to deplete the stocks across the globe.
Yeah, and I think they breed
Um,
every 3 years or so. So
mm,
so I think it takes time for them to breed one. They are pregnant for about 1 year, and then their
yeah.
calves follow them for quite a while as well. And these slaughters, they do take the entire family, the entire pod. So this like one
Mm,
version of the genetic pool is just wiped out totally, which isn't really
mm,
good for like conservation perspectives as well.
mm. Is it? What's How are you guys received when you're on the island? You know, once they start to recognise that you're an activist, someone who is effectively saying what they're doing, what they believe to be right is wrong. What, how are you received?
Well, oh, it's such a good question. Differently,
Mm.
depending on who you're
I
talking
have
to.
one every now and then.
Many people would just, yeah. Well, some people just ignore you, and they don't want to like be seen next to you or anything. Other people will have a conversation. Some people, like most people, are very gentle and nice. Actually, I've had amazing good conversation with those people who are willing to have a conversation with me. And then you
Mm,
have the odd experience of people who find it interesting or necessary to attack me or abuse me. And I've been threatened on my life. I've been attacked physically. Some people has been like physically blocking my camera and standing in front of me, like holding. There's been different things.
mm,
There's been quite a few people trying to steal my camera or my mobile phone, depending on what I've used to document, and that's unfortunate. I think it doesn't represent the Faroese as a community, but there will always be
mm,
one or two of these kind of people who feel it their responsibility to be more I don't know, physical, I guess.
yeah. Is it more the older generation that are like that with you?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
the man who threatened me on my life was probably around like 10, 15 years older than me, not more than that. But
Oh,
most
that's the dude that you caught on video, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah. On during the live stream, he basically said, "I'm going to cut
Mm,
your head off, or I'm going to kill you." He said.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but the most of the other guys have been a little bit more older, and the people that have had
How
the
did,
best
sorry,
conversations. Sorry.
go on, go on.
Yeah, and the people that I've had the best conversations with has been around my own age or younger.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask that dude that threatened to cut your head off. I can remember seeing him do this.
Yeah.
Um, how do you stay calm with that kind of aggression coming at you? Because generally, I'd end up opting for getting ready to defend myself. That's a polite way of saying it.
Yeah, I think that like if I felt immediate physical danger, then I would of course probably have to try to defend myself in some way. But
Mm,
just a threat or just a physical push or just a punch or just like that's not really that problematic. And one of the
mm,
things that I do have to remember when I do things like this is that I'm not here for myself. I'm here
mm,
trying to be a voice for those who have their own voices, but they're simply just not heard.
yeah.
And as a voice for them, if I start acting out in violent ways, I I kind of lose that ability. Like
Mm,
as soon as they can write about the activist who punched a local,
mm,
then the conversation is over. And I don't want that to happen. I want to bring the conversation there. So when these things happen, I do have to just stay calm. And as long as I don't feel that I'm about to be killed, then I will just take whatever comes and try to brush it off.
Yeah.
And of course, that's easy to say, but when you're in the situation, your heart starts racing and your blood starts pumping, and you definitely feel the adrenaline. Um,
Yeah.
but I don't think that there's any other way to handle it, being there for the animals. If I want to keep the focus on them, not me.
Mm. Yeah. That's a good reflection on what I mentioned in the interview, in the introduction. You know, the way that you are carrying yourself um, is generally, um, as far as activism goes, I would say in a perfect way,
Oh well,
because you're
thank you.
doing the non-aggressive, non-assertive kind of, um, you know, approach, and I think that goes a long way. Really does. And bravo for not knocking him out, by the way.
Thank you. Try my
I bet
best.
he didn't know you were in the army before.
Well, I don't know. The thing is that I'm also quite a large man.
Yeah.
My body weight is 110 kilograms, I don't easily feel threatened by other people.
Mm.
That gives me an edge that I think many don't have. I think that most attacks are usually just like people wanting to show people, the friends around them, that they're not afraid to do so. Like I've seen a lot of people who has
Yeah.
been quite assaulting at me or assaulting me, and then they go around, they get pats on their backs from their friends, even if nothing really happened. They just pushed and touched a little bit. So I think there's a lot of like just showboating, like, hey, look at me, I'm being here, and I'm opposing to this sea shepherd activist.
Yeah.
But I think it's
So,
important to be in all matters, or always possible, to be as gentle and calm as possible. And I'm trying. I'm not always succeeding.
I think quite a few people would probably find a 110-kilo Viking being very, very calm in the time of aggression as probably quite scary anyway.
Maybe
So yeah,
it's
it works. Um, so apart from the fools that want to threaten you, um, I think you've mentioned a couple of times that there's Faroese that are keen to see an end to this as well. Um,
there are, yeah.
is there a large population, or is it just a small factor, falls a small sector of the population?
Well, one of the issues that we struggle with when it comes to the grind is because it has such a high kind of status as a tradition among the Faroese. Opposing it is not frowned upon. It is actively sought out and bullied by some, which means that
Mm,
if somebody speaks their mind against the grind, they can sometimes their comments can be screenshotted and shared in hate groups, and they can be bullied into silence. And that has been happening for such a long time that people contact me quite regularly and say, "Hey, I'm Faroese. I support the work you do. I even support that you're here with Sea Shepherd, even if I can't do that publicly." And so that's
yeah,
one of the things that we see a lot, that people aren't necessarily agreeing with the grind, but they don't feel that they are empowered to speak out themselves. One of the
mm,
guys that contacted me said, "Well, I asked him after having a short conversation. I said, well, would you be willing to speak out?" And he was like, "No, no, no, I can't do that. If I do that, I lose all my customers, and that's my livelihood."
mm,
And of course,
yeah,
I can share these stories, but I can't, like, I have to keep these people anonymous so that they don't get bullied and they don't lose their customers. Um,
mm,
so I think even if there is quite a big group of people who are against these killings, they are muffled. They're silenced by their own peers. So I think that's also one of the reasons why it's important that external forces come in, or external activists come in and try to raise these topics, and hopefully one
yeah,
day will empower the locals to do so themselves.
yeah.
Um,
I see that at the moment there's pressure on the prime minister or the heads of state to do something about it. How's that going?
Well, that's actually is hard to say because, like, the Faroese government will say, "We are looking into this," and that is a nice blanket
Mm.
statement to say that in a few months, when this blows over, we don't have to do so much. But since the dolphin slaughter, which is the reason for all this, because after the 1,400 dolphins were brutally killed, and there are video material that shows how they were mistreated, the world has kind of united now against this kind of actions. And this is the nice thing. Even the locals has done so. So there's a lot of
Really?
people in the Faroe Islands now speaking out against this dolphin killing. Not necessarily
Mm.
against the Grind totally, but at least against the white-sided dolphin slaughter. And
Mm.
even the local companies, the largest industry on the Faroe Islands, which is the salmon industry, they have united and said that we did not support the dolphin killing. And this is
Mm.
massive. This is like the number one financial weight of the Faroe Islands. So, of course, then they are
That's the
forced.
it's the salmon farming that's
Yeah, yeah. The
the
fish
income. Yeah.
exports is the number one income for the Faroe Islands.
Mm.
So when we start talking about boycotting internationally, then they have to think about what they want to prioritize, their own economy, or their one tradition that doesn't really do that much to their inhabitants anymore.
Mm. So is there any evidence that there's a monetary value to the grind? They're not just slaughtering these animals and giving them out to the local. They're not going knocking around a house and saying, "Here's a piece of pilot whale for you." Is there money involved here? Are they profiteering from it?
Well, and that's actually also quite a good question. It used to be a non financial tradition, like with no money involved at all. But there has been
Mm.
some changes the last year, I think it was. I think they passed a law that allows them now to actually sell the meats. There's always
Mm-hmm.
been sold some meat in like supermarkets, but that's like if I get a piece of the meat and I treat it, and then I can sell it and then I can do whatever I want with it. But
Mm.
now they're talking more and more about allowing a more commercial viewpoint on this. And
Mm.
I spoke to some that said, like, if you eat, like, one of the things that happen is that if you're the person who discovers the pod, you get more than everybody else. So you'll either get the biggest whale for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
or you'll get two of the smaller ones, which it's basically a few hundred kilograms of meat is too much for most people. And I've heard that you can sell
Mm.
these for quite a lot of money if you don't want to use it all.
Yeah.
And we're talking about like tens of thousands of krones for these whales. So,
What's that trans? Hold on. What's that translate to in like US dollar or something like that?
well, US dollars about 12,000. No, wait, 10,000, $1,200.
Okay.
Somewhere between that and like $3,000. I've heard. So, of course, that is a quite substantial amount of money for just seeing pilot whale pod and reporting it.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
so that's one of the ways that they've like made sure that people want to spot these pods. Is they say, like, if you're the one who spots it, you'll get a bonus, and whatever you do with
Yeah.
that is up to you. And now with
Yeah.
the
Is it?
rules changed so that you can sell it, then everything also changes. It becomes less and less of a traditional, like, let's share with everybody, all the poor ones and all like, I think that traditionally they used to take the leftovers after the hunters got theirs. They would use that to
Mm.
give to feed the elders and the kindergartens and so forth. But now
Mm.
this is changing, I think.
There's a lot of leftovers though, isn't there? Seeing your videos.
That is I think that question, it depends on your perspective. Um, I would say
Well,
yes,
if I
there's a
if I
lot of
if I if I was to
leftovers.
yeah,
Yeah,
if I was to catch a trout when I'm out camping, I catch a trout, I'll gut it, and I'll eat everything.
mhm.
Apart from the skeleton.
Yeah,
I won't just cut out the center fillet and chuck everything else in the bin.
exactly. And I think I agree with you totally on this. I think that what they do is they cut out the nicest pieces, and then they give everything else back to nature, so to say. And
Yeah.
when you walk on those beaches or on those harbors after the slaughter, you can see there's a lot of um, meat left on the animals.
Mm.
Some are just not that palatable, I guess.
Yeah.
Especially like far back on the tail and around the head, it's apparently not that tasteful.
Mm.
And like traditionally they used to use much more of the animals, of course, because back then it was something they did to survive. So they used parts of
Mm.
the animals for tools, they used the head to lure in fish to the nearby harbor, so they would dump them into the ocean and just like wait for like other fishes to come and eat on them so they could capture them.
Mm.
They would make fish oils or whale oils. They would make like they would do a lot of things. Now they basically just cut
Yeah.
out the nicest pieces of meats and blubber and use that and throw the rest away. They would of course argue that they use everything, but I think the picture speaks for themselves, that they don't.
Yeah. It's a bit of an argument that you can't win, really, is it? When you leave a carcass on lined up on the harbour.
Yeah, but then they would just say, "Well, you don't know how to cut up these animals, so you don't know how much work we do." But I would argue, like, if you like, I come from Norway, we don't really eat pilot whales, but we do eat a lot of animals, and we try to use every
Mm.
single part of it. And like, for example, the ribs of a pig, we will roast. I don't support that at all, but people do that. And but for these
Mm.
animals, there's so much. Like edible parts still left on the animals, and they're just thrown away. And especially
Yeah.
with the massive dolphin slaughter that they did the other day, they threw away all the blubber because they don't like the taste of it. Um,
So effectively, the salmon that are being sold on the supermarket shelves around the world, they're being fed on the carcasses of these animals that they're killing on the beach.
in theory, that could be possible.
It's an Yeah.
I don't think that they will admit to it. I think that usually what
Yeah.
they do is they pull these carcasses out into the ocean and just dump them. Um,
Mm.
so and the question is, of course, what did they actually do with the meat? Because there's like a lot of the meat is actually just frozen so that they can take it out of the freezer and cook it when they want it. And there's a lot of
Mm.
reports saying that when a new grind happens in an area, if you already had grind meat in your freezer, there's a lot of people saying that people just throw out the old meats and replace it in the freezer because after every hunt, people get like I think it's like 75 kilograms of meat and blubber in total. So of
Mm.
course, it's not that common to have a lot of room in your freezer. And if they don't eat all that during the year, then why save some in the freezer? I guess. So I've heard
Yeah.
tales of like the garbage men really struggling with the garbage bags close after a grin because they were now filled with like frozen meats.
Yeah. All waste.
Yeah.
Is there any evidence that um, any of this is going overseas? Because I know that pilot whale is quite a common bar snack in some pubs and stuff in Japan, as
Oh,
an
is
example.
it? I didn't know.
Yeah.
I haven't really
Like you
followed
get
up on
a
that trail. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah when you get a cheaper pub like a I don't know the Western World, I suppose an Irish bar or something like that, and you have peanuts and stuff on the bar.
Yeah.
There's I can't remember the name of the bars now, but there's a particular style of bar in Japan that would serve up pilot whale, maybe as a bit of sashimi
Oh,
as a snack, a bar snack,
I
and it's
didn't know.
generally pilot whale.
Huh.
Yeah,
I don't think that the Faroe Islands is
I'll
the
yeah,
only country that does slaughter pilot whales. So it
yeah,
could be from other countries. But wow,
yeah.
that's interesting.
I'll dig out the name of the type of bar and send it across to you. I can't remember it. My
Yeah,
Japanese isn't great.
that's all right. But we have seen that there has been like whole whales transported to airports, but we
Oh,
don't know what happens after that. They could be
okay.
cooled down and sent to other countries for sale, or they could be
Mm,
sent for research, for all we know. But we have seen quite a lot of
yeah.
movement and try to follow it, but it's not always possible
Mm,
when they go into an airport, for example.
yeah. Okay. That might be worth looking at because I know Shark Guardian have had some successes with effectively harassing airlines to stop the movement of shark fins.
Oh,
And
nice.
it works quite well.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, because the airline want to make money.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
you start putting a limelight on them that they're shipping the meat that everybody doesn't want shipped, then all of a sudden they'll drop it because they want more profit in the company rather than losses.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Mm.
That's yeah, we need all the different pressures, like methods of pressure that we can get to end this,
Mm.
because right now it's as I said, it's there is something happening when with the debate. Like there's a lot of people speaking out against dolphin killing, and that momentum
Mm.
is something we need to keep pressing on, so that something might
Mm.
happen.
So more precisely now about the dolphin killing.
Mhm.
If I've got, please correct me if I'm wrong. Once a pod is spotted, there are particular individuals that are, for sake, the managers, excuse me, of that grind, and they
Mhm.
decide that it's time to bring them in, and they decide when the slaughter stops. Is that correct?
Yes, they're called a grind foreman. Um,
Okay.
in easy English. And that's true. Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah. So there can't be many rules behind having this job because slaughtering over 1,000 dolphins in one hit, it isn't kind of, we've got enough now. Let's knock it on the head and let the rest go. I'm assuming they all got slaughtered.
Well, there are reports of a few hundred being let go, but they're
Okay.
unconfirmed. So depending on who you ask, they will say, "Yes, I heard about this," but nobody can confirm it. But I don't have any reason to doubt that that's true.
Mm.
So I think, but one of the reasons why it happened so late, so many dolphins were slaughtered, is that they simply did not know how many were in the pod when they started the hunt. The first
I
reports
see.
I got was 400 to 500, which was already a huge pod. And then, of course, as they were pushed closer to land, this number was increasing. But
Mm.
the problem is that as soon as these dolphins are beached, it's quite hard to get them out again. Um,
Mm.
so from this viewpoint of the people on the beach, as soon as these dolphins are stranded, the only way forward is to kill them, because there's
Yeah.
simply not enough people to pull them out again or to keep them safe. And you might be able to correct me if I'm wrong here, but I've heard also that as soon as, like, these animals are used to floating in the water, and as soon as they are beached, their body are basically compressing their own lungs and making it quite hard for them.
Mm.
And so, from the perspective of the slaughters or the hunters on the beach, they want to kill them as fast as possible, um, both for the meat, and also to be kind-ish to the animals.
Mm.
And so,
I think there's probably um, something right about the gravity being on weighted down and not buoyant in water. However, um, if that was the case, every fish that was caught on a fishing line that hit land would just die.
yeah,
They don't, you know. Um, so, and how many whales and big animals have we seen on beaches that people have used tractors and God knows what else to put them back in the ocean,
mm,
and they swim away?
yeah.
So I think that's probably just a bit of a lame ass excuse for those that want to make an excuse, to be honest.
uh, sure,
But yeah,
sure.
it's on balance.
Yeah, but also, like, imagine the scene. Imagine being on a beach and you have maybe 10, 20, 30 people willing to be part of the killing, and then you have
Yeah.
hundreds and hundreds of dolphins just swimming or like stranded close to the end of the water or to the beach. I just imagine pure chaos. And you also see that on the
Mm.
video material from this very slaughter, how
Mm.
the hunters are just like, okay, let's just cut into it. And because these dolphins are smaller than the pilot whales, so the methods they regularly use to, like, put a spear into their spinal cord, they didn't use that here. They just took a sharp knife and just slashed their necks open. um,
Yeah.
so I think
Uh,
I think it was just too chaotic, and by the time that somebody called off the hunt, there was like 1,400 dolphins stranded on these beaches, and they just continued killing.
Yeah, yeah. It's a difficult one. I mean, I can only imagine that those people that are doing it and comfortably doing it have grown up with it.
Yeah.
So they're very used to it, and I'm rather comfortable watching horrific stuff on TV, and it doesn't upset me much at all.
Mm.
But having watched that, and I know a lot of people will say, "Oh, it's just fish, it's just dolphins," but when you see individuals
Mm.
effectively bullying something that can't defend itself, it's sickening and unrelentless. So I must admit, I didn't watch all of that. I
No,
didn't watch it through to the end.
I think that's good for your own
Um,
health. I've had to watch it
yeah,
because that's part of my job, and it does affect me.
exactly. Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Hmm.
But like I just said there must be people on the island that have grown up with this and don't know any different, um, and can't see why people like us are talking on a podcast about something that they've done all their lives, and their dads and uncles and so on and so forth down the generations have done the same. Um,
Yeah, I guess. But I've also spoken to some people who still participate in the hunt, and they can tell me that like the first time they saw a palo whale hunt, they felt bad.
yeah,
For some, like in some capacity, they were saddened by it or they were disgusted by it. Some people has told me that they took a lot of time for them to get over it, and then
mm,
somehow they did, and now they participate, or they spent the rest of their lives participating before they decided to stop. So
yeah,
there is of course, like, we are all indoctrinated to some degree
mm,
by what we learned from our parents. For example, for me, who doesn't consume animal products at all, I of course also can equate this to the indoctrination that I got as a kid, learning that eating animals were just like natural and necessary,
mm,
and they learned the same, but their slaughterhouses has been out in the open, and they had to participate to some extent, while we didn't have to. So
mm,
it's it's easy to see open slaughterhouse and say that these people are so and so brutal or whatever, but we're like the way we treat animals in our own slaughterhouses are also equally brutal. They're just confined behind closed walls and
yeah,
tainted windows, so that people don't see what they buy. Um,
mm.
so it's an
Ignorance is
interesting.
bliss, isn't it?
It is, and yeah, it definitely is, and we're all
Mm,
basically indoctrinated to some extent. Um, but these are just done out in the open, and as I said, a lot of them saw when they saw it for the first times, they were like really appalled by it. But then they
mm,
had to kind of just like man up and man through it and get used to it, because
yeah,
it was expected of them to some degree to
yeah,
participate.
yeah. And I suppose it is human nature. You're forced to do something and continue to do it, and it becomes repetitive, and the brain numbs itself to the horrors that are going on,
Yeah, for
whatever
sure.
that may be. Yeah.
And you can notice that, or I could notice that. Like I was this summer, I was part of 7 separate grins, um, and of course, the first one and the second one was tougher than the fifth or sixth one to watch.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
Even if it was horrible to watch in all cases, it was like it does change when you see it a few times. Like it's not that
yeah.
you don't care, but it's get easier to process.
Mm. And I think that's important as well, because you're exposing yourself to it, and you're getting over that adrenaline fueled fear and horror of what you're seeing.
Hmm.
As you get used to it, you can then report on it more effectively, because, again, as I mentioned earlier on, that emotion is taken out of the um, criteria when you're putting the point across.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm.
So
So,
so yeah. So my
it's
job
one of
was,
those things that has to be done to get the news out there, I suppose.
yeah, yeah, and my job was to tell their story as good best as I can with the tools that I have at hand. And
Mm.
from my perspective, it was a drone or a camera.
Mm.
So seeing them and trying to find the the images that would make an impact, so that I could maybe I couldn't save these individuals. I knew that when I went there, but maybe my material and my other colleagues' material one day can be a part of um, starting the things that needed to happen to end it in the future.
Mm.
So then we need
And
to
what's
be.
have you got any have you got any idea how to end this?
Well, I think there's a couple of different ways that could be very effective. One of them, of course, is international financial pressure. I think
Mm.
that, for example, as we see now, as I said, the salmon farmers has distanced themselves from this, which is
Mm.
probably a very unpopular thing to do locally, but internationally, it's so important to maintain the sales of the Faroese fish exports. So I think that that proves, or at least to a certain extent, shows that they are afraid of the ramifications of this internationally. So if we can
Mm.
keep the pressure up, um, and if those companies, those biggest like salmon export companies, if they were to say that we need to end this because otherwise we won't survive financially, that would make a huge impact on a country that are so dependent on these economies,
Mm.
or like fish
Yeah.
farming economies. So I think that that's probably one of the best ways right now, is just to keep the pressure up on the fish farmers and say, hey guys, if you don't at least try to stop this, then we will boycott your products.
Mm.
Um, at least that's one of my impressions. Like, the very best way would of course be if they voted on it locally and just decided, well, there's not enough support for this anymore. Um, but I think that's harder. I think that while probably most of the Faroese are apathetic to it, I don't think they
Mm.
would vote to ban it. So,
Is that because of the fear and the bullying that you mentioned earlier, or?
well, if the vote was anonymous, then of course not. But I think that, like, you
Mm.
have a tradition in your country; it's a part of your country, like your country spirit or whatever you want to call it. And voting to
Mm.
ban it would be kind of like voting against your own country. So I think that a lot of people who
Mm.
just like, well, I don't consume that much of the whale meats, and I don't really care. I think they would be
Mm.
voting maybe, like not yes, not no, but maybe, or I don't care, or I don't know, like that third option that
Mm.
you always get. Um, so I guess maybe if they had a vote about should we keep allowing it, and it had to get like a 51% majority vote, then that might be where something happened. But I don't know. I think that most of the maybes would vote in favor of keeping the grind because of the value as a tradition, or uh, I don't know. But even
Mm.
if yeah, I don't know. But I think that
Are
like
they?
international pressure is one of the major ways to do it, and hopefully if that doesn't help, local pressure, working, building it up slowly with like keeping or getting people to be able to speak out and to be like outspoken about this topic, in a more
Mm.
healthy way, so that Sea Shepherd doesn't have to come there and get involved. I think that would be better for sure.
Yeah. Has anyone actually asked them what they're going to do when they've killed them all? What happens when there's no sport? When there's no fish left to sport? What they're going to do?
Well, no, and I think the reason for that is that they kill about like somewhere between 600 and 1,000 pilot whales a year, and the hunt is considered
Mm.
sustainable. So they aren't considered as the major force of depleting the ocean of pilot whales. They're
Okay.
one of the drops in the bucket, so to say. And
Mm.
as you said in the beginning, the stock is measured out at somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million individuals,
Mm.
and taking 600 away from that wouldn't be considered like a big amount to kill in an annual hunt. But then you have of course all the other ways animals die in the
Mm.
ocean because of fishing industries and because of this and that effects, plastic in them, sorry, plastic in their stomachs and so forth. So there's a lot of forces right now pushing on, or pressure, keeping pressure on fish stocks and dolphin stocks and aquatic animals in general. So
Mm.
so we need to be mindful. And that one dolphin slaughter that we saw, I think, estimates say that they killed about like between 1 and 2% of the entire North Atlantic white-sided dolphin stock in one hunt,
Mm.
which is
Yeah.
it's
It's
just
ridiculous.
it's ridiculous.
It's again, it's that out of sight, out of mind thing. We can't, being landlubbers, we can't see under the water unless you get in there,
Yeah,
and not a lot of people do. So, you know,
exactly.
where Sir David Attenborough used to put all those magnificent, elephant herds going across the Serengeti in their hundreds of thousands, and now a herd is 10 or 12.
Yeah,
The same's happening in the oceans. We just don't see it.
exactly. So, but that's one of the things that I really like. Before the dolphin slaughter, there was another grind whale slaughter in the same bay,
Mm.
and with the drone, I really got to capture the swimming and the chase of that pod, and I could see how they all kind of breached the water, and that was quite amazing to see them so close,
Mm.
because I flew very close to them with the drone, and that material, I think it just really shows how they stay together, even when they're chased, and just try to protect each other, but they're just
Yeah,
simply not allowed to by the hunters.
yeah. And I mean, we've not touched on it yet, but you know, the more you look into pilot whales there and dolphins, everyone knows that they come together, but they literally are born into the same pod, and they live in the same pod for most of their, well, very rarely they leave. They stay all their lives, don't
Mm,
they?
mm.
They're a very family orientated species.
They are, and they stick together and they protect each other. You can see that when you see a full pod slaughtered, there will be newly borns. There will be very very old leaders. They're huge and full of scars all over their bodies, and you'll have
Yeah.
everyone in between as well. So you can really see the family structure in those
Mm.
pods.
So what's happening next? The Sea Shepherd going back again next year?
Mm, yes, for sure.
Okay,
We will.
good.
I think Sea Shepherd will continue to go back until it's not necessary,
Mm.
and then, despite the criticism. But well, what Sea Shepherd is, at least that's my understanding, is trying to do now is not just document, but is also to, as I said, build relationships with the locals, speak with them, see
Mm.
if there's enough voices against this that can be united and feel strength together.
Mm.
Right now, even if the Faroe Islands is quite a small island community, there will be like one or two people opposing a Grind in every like small village or town. And I
Mm.
think since people don't speak about it, they feel quite alone, and they feel quite um, exposed if they do talk about it. So I think
Yeah.
that one of the major goals should, of course, be to empower them, to give them a voice, and to try to show them that they can speak out. And yeah, so I think that's one of the main goals, and that's especially also for me as an activist. I try to find ways to share information that gives them these tools, just constructively discuss the pilot
Mm.
whale hunting without being too emotional. And of course,
Mm.
that is hard for a person who is emotionally um, involved as I am. But I think that's one of the major ways to do it, just to show them that their arguments doesn't really hold anymore. They shouldn't
Mm.
eat the pilot whale, especially they should not feed it to their kids, and they should avoid it, or maybe they should quote it, like have some kind of quota to severely restrict the killing, because there's no way that they're eating 600 pilot whales a year and staying within their health recommendations.
Yeah,
So
because isn't it full of high level mercury?
that is the thing, and that is like it's not the fault of the Faroese um, themselves, because they're not the major pollutants of the ocean, but the
No.
whales are on the top of the food chain.
Yeah.
The toothed dolphins are eating other predatory fish, so they are simply just accumulating mercury and other pollutants, and
Mm.
so that of course ends up in the people who eat them, and
It would be interesting if they did a study on the quantity of mercury in residents on the islands?
Oh, they do every year.
Oh, do they?
Oh yeah, yeah. There's continuous studies on this. Like the Faroe Islands are internationally considered one of the example islands of what happens when the population is exposed to a lot of mercury and PCBs and other dioxins. And they have seen, yeah, yeah. It's really weird, but they have studied children and they've seen cognitive decline. They've studied elders and they've seen a lot of not Alzheimer's but Parkinson's. They've studied there's a
Yeah.
lot of different diseases that are associated with these pollutants and poisons
Mm.
that you can see a much higher amount of on the Faroe Islands. So they know about them, about health issues that this causes, but to some degree they choose to ignore it. Many people avoid
Right.
giving it to the children, thankfully. That's so important because especially young women are oh, young women are recommended not to consume pilot whale blubber before they have their
Mm.
children, which says a lot. And I think that to put it into perspective, 1 gram of pilot whale meat in average contains about 2 micrograms of mercury. And I think that's more than 10 times as much as is allowed in the rest of Europe. So,
Oh my god.
yeah,
This gets more ridiculous, doesn't it?
I know. And that's why I said earlier on that even their own health government is recommending them not to consume that much. Sorry.
Yeah.
Their own health
That's all right.
government is recommending them to consume maximum 300 grams in total of meat and blubber every month as an adult
Yeah.
because they know the negative effects this has. Um,
Wow.
so it's quite
It's all it's it
special.
it's like an aquatic tobacco industry.
Oh, yeah,
Buy
true.
our cigarettes. They're going to kill you, but you're going to love them on the way. It's ludicrous.
Yeah, and I agree. And then add to this the wonderful thing of them giving pilot whale meat, at least traditionally, to kindergartens and older people and weak people. It is
Mm.
the equivalent of social dumping. They're giving
Yeah.
toxic food to the weakest,
Yeah.
and they don't do that to that extent anymore that they used to do. But it is still something that is offered to those who are poor, and they do argue that they don't have that the poor population is big enough, so they need to give this to them. And I
Mm.
find it so interesting that any community in the world would say, well, we need this poisonous food to feed our poor.
Yeah.
It
I
doesn't.
mean, you got to be really desperate to do that, haven't you?
Exactly. And the fairies
Yeah.
aren't, it isn't a poor nation.
No.
They're quite wealthy. So this argument doesn't hold either.
No. I think your way forward is going to be the younger people. By the sounds of it, it's just stubbornness, and maybe there's some monetary things, profits going on for people that have been doing it for decades. But this day and age, it's going to be the younger people that say, "Hold up a moment, let's sort this out."
Yeah, for sure.
Mm, yeah.
So,
Um, hmm. Okay. Well,
gave you something to chew on
what's
there,
next
huh?
for yourself? I mean, yeah. I mean, you're now back in Norway. I'm sure you're going to have a little bit of a rest up and some family time. But what have you got on? What's coming for you next? What's your
Well,
next little project?
right now I'm still working with Sea Shepherd. We're still
Hmm.
trying to keep focus on this, and it's we can't really let this go because if we do, then it might just fizzle out and become nothing, just as I suspect that Prime
Yeah.
Minister hopes. So we're keeping the pressure high, and every time there is a mention of this, we try to bring more attention to it. There was a
Mm.
grind happening just after the dolphin slaughter, so which was almost like a mark of power. We can still do it, even if there is internationally a lot of criticism. So we
Mm.
use those events to keep the pressure up. And I'm going to probably be working on this at least part time until next year. But I do work with other things. Like mostly, I focus on Norwegian farming.
Yep.
I'm a full-time animal rights activist, so that's a part of my job. And I'm also taking up diving because I want to work with ghost net campaigns to pick out those from the
Yeah.
oceans, which is a huge problem, which you probably know more about than me. Um, so that's my
You've got
focus right now. Sorry?
there's a lot of work there that will keep you going for many years.
Exactly. Yeah. So
So just touching on the diving a little bit, actually, because seeing as we're scuba,
yeah, go for it.
you've just recently done your advanced course, haven't you?
I have, yeah.
Right.
I won't say that I've done a lot of diving. I took my open water 10 years ago,
Yeah.
and my motivation back then was that I was going traveling, so I wanted to be able to dive. And
Yeah.
and then it took me like 10 years before I went back into the ocean as a diver. So I'm finding the inspiration right now. So I'm gathering up some gear and gathering up some courses, and hoping
Yeah.
to make a difference also underneath the water.
Yeah. And you can. I mean, it's a fantastic way to do it, to have the skills that you've got and take that underwater with you. I think you're going to love it.
I'm hoping so. Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe have a chat with, we had Jono on from Sea Shepherd. He he's the coordinator for Apex Harmony, Sea Shepherd's Apex Harmony, which is looking at the shark nets up and down the coast at Queensland.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so when it comes to getting in the water and getting the kind of footage that you guys and Sea Shepherd want to get, then someone like him, and he's more than happy to spend hours talking about how he does it.
Oh, that's cool.
So maybe you should have a chat with that guy and get some insider tips on your way forward.
I will do. I'll do so for sure.
Yeah, I'll hook you up. He's a good lad.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
And one other thing that's just sprang to mind as well, actually, is I noticed that one of the posts you listed like the email addresses and the phone numbers of the politicians to put the pressure on them. And I think I'll have to double check on it, but I think if someone writes a letter to an embassy, so it's Faroese is Danish, isn't it? Is that correct?
Yes. Oh,
so if someone in America, go on.
no, it is. They are self-governed, but they're part of the Danish. Yeah, to some extent.
Okay. So if I were here in Australia or someone in America wrote a letter against what's going on in the Faroe Islands at the moment and sent it to the embassy within the country that they reside, I think there's an official documentation that makes it an official document when it comes into the embassy.
Yeah.
So rather than just firing it into one office in Denmark, if we can instigate people in a lot of countries hitting up the Danish embassies in those countries, then it might carry quite a bit of weight.
That's a good idea. Yeah. There is also a newly released webpage called stopthegrind.com, where you're right now it's a signature campaign to pressure the UK government to stop their trade deals with the Faroe Islands.
The UK's got trade deals with them.
Yeah, for millions and millions.
Really?
It's both. It's not just about the Grind, but it's like it's a neighbor country, so they export and import from each other. And
Of course they would, yeah.
Yeah, and since the pala whale hunt is technically illegal within the EU, most EU countries aren't agreeing with this slaughter. So putting pressure on like trade deals within the EU could also be a one way to keep that pressure up. But yeah, so
Mate, I'm glad you said that. I'm going to put you in touch with Brendan and Liz from Shark Guardian. They were massively like the tip of the spear for preventing shark fin trade across the UK borders.
okay,
And they
wow.
were successful getting it through Parliament. So if anyone knows how to be a pain in the backside and actually get things motivated in the UK, it's going to be Brendan and Liz.
Amazing.
I'll hook you up.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate
They will
that.
have an inordinate amount of information on how to be getting into Parliament and getting action taken.
Cool. That's
Sure.
exactly what we need.
So you're going to be focused on the rest of the year, getting everything mapped out for the Grind. Has it got an operation name or anything like that?
Well, it was used to be called Operation Bloody Fjords.
Okay.
So I don't know how much that's used anymore. So right now we're
Mm.
just capitalizing the Faroe Island campaign.
Okay.
But don't quote me too
Yeah.
much on that because I'm not 100%
Yeah.
sure.
Well, we'll just keep an eye on social media and see
Yeah,
what they go with.
yeah. I'm just a foot soldier, you know. I'm not one of those big brainiacs.
Oh, mate, without the foot soldiers, nothing gets done.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah,
So,
and I think Sea Shepherd have got themselves a massive asset in yourself.
well,
Just keep
thank you.
doing what you're doing.
I I,
My
I
pleasure.
hope that I'm doing something good.
Yeah, credit where credit's due. And I must admit, I did watch the live Sea Shepherd YouTube feed that went on, and you fell down a hole. I couldn't help laughing at that one.
Me
Maybe
neither.
maybe don't.
I was, you know, when that happens during a live stream, you kind of have to try to keep your cool. But I couldn't because I was like, look at this hole. um, and then I kind of had to recompose myself because
Yeah,
people were watching after all. And as soon as we broke the stream, we both, like me and my colleague, we just broke into like laughter and almost like tears, and everything was so hilarious. We were just like, how could that happen? It's just insane. But it was definitely an experience, learning to keep your cool to some
yeah,
extent, not entirely. Um, but yeah, that was, I don't know. When I look at it now, I see myself walking backwards. I was like,
yeah,
why? Why do you walk
yeah,
backwards? But it was like, I remember like it was noises in the background, and I was trying to like move out of like the way the sounds were coming through, like around a building, to shield
yeah.
the microphone. But yeah,
They look very professional.
the
Yeah,
fall. Yeah.
turn up on
Wah!
newsreel bloopers in the future.
Well, I got a lot of messages from people thinking it was somebody who jumped me. Uh,
Oh, really?
yeah, but thankfully it was just me
Yeah.
being a dumbass.
Brilliant,
That
brilliant.
was actually like afterwards. Like I had like a couple of bruises, but nothing happened. So it was like being
Yeah,
such a fall. I was very lucky. So I'm just like,
yeah.
imagine me like hitting a rock and like kicking out a few teeth or something, and like trying to
Yeah.
be professional. And like, yes, the stream will continue.
You got away with it lightly, I must admit, because when you flip the phone down so that you could see the hole, it's not a shallow hole, is it?
No, no, and I think like being a quite tall guy, I fell all the way flats, so it was quite an impact. But yeah, it's
Oh dear.
just another day at the job.
Yeah.
Now, but I think one of my things that I do want to focus on is also Norway, because Norway is also a whale hunting country. We we
Yeah.
uh, we hunt and kill a lot of whales, and it's horrible. And traditionally, I have put some emphasis on this, but not enough. I think that's
Mm.
also one of the battles that we could be able to win, to protect the oceans. And
Mm.
right now, the pressure isn't high enough on the whale slaughters here in Norway. So I think that's also one of the things that this campaign has inspired in me, and
Mm.
hopefully I can be a part of or build up a team that will work more effectively on that as well,
Mm.
without
It makes
falling into
sense.
holes in the ground.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it does make sense because, I mean, if you were to discuss whale hunting with people that aren't keeping up with what's going on in the oceanic world,
Mm.
they automatically start to think about the Far East and China, Japan, etc., etc., and probably don't even know that it goes on in the likes of Faroe Islands and Norway.
Mm. I think
Yeah.
that's true.
So bringing the spotlight over to those countries that are going beneath the radar right now is probably a wise move.
Yeah,
Mm.
and it's
Brilliant.
it's not like is Norway does kill quite a lot of whales every year, so it's
Yeah.
And it's a horrible, horrible, like the method they use is also horrible. We can talk to lengths about that as well, but maybe next year after I've done some more research.
Yeah. Oh, isn't it the Norwegian military that are doing? I think is it the Norwegian? I saw a report a few weeks ago. It might have been even a month ago now. That I think it's Norwegian military were capturing right whales so that they could do sonar and sound testing on the creatures and actually emit the sounds to see what kind of effect it does have on the creatures
Oh
for
wow.
the oil and gas industry.
Huh. I
It's
didn't know
definitely one
about
of the
this.
Scandinavian countries. I might have it wrong, and forgive me if it isn't Norway, but it's one of the Scandinavian countries.
Well,
I'll
if it
dig it
is,
out.
it's most likely that it is the Norwegian uh,
Yeah,
military because of the large coastline and also the large oil operations that we have. So it would make
yeah.
sense.
I stumbled across it when I was looking at the I think who was I speaking to? In fact, it was another sea shepherd, Jeff, when Jeff Hansen was on, and he was
Okay.
talking about the seismic testing that they do down, or they've just approved off the Australian coast. And I think when I was looking at that, I found it online. That
Okay.
yeah, I'll find it again. I'll send you the link. That'll
Thank
be
you.
something for
I
you.
appreciate that. Every
See,
every
coming on
tool
this
that I
podcast,
have.
it's going to keep you very, very busy.
Yeah. That's great. I want to be busy, so that's
Awesome.
perfect.
Yeah, yeah. Well, obviously, it's going to cost money to keep you going and doing the good stuff that you do. So I mentioned it earlier on briefly, and we'll put it into the show notes. But you have got Patreon that people can sub you a few dollars per month and keep you going.
Yes.
Fingers crossed, we get a lot more people on that one as well, and keep you focused on what you're doing, mate.
Well, if that happens, I'm really thankful for it, because it does make a
Mm.
difference.
Mm.
Just just a small amount from many people is what keeps me
Mm.
driving right now. So I'm
Mm.
really humbled by that type of supports, and I try to make the best use of it as I can. And
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
thank you for
And
sharing that.
in fact, to tell you one thing, a little bit of advice actually, you've got PayPal on there as well.
I do.
Get rid of them. Yeah, get rid of them.
Oh,
They take too much in fees. Get rid of them. You're not there to make profit for someone like PayPal. Have you
I
ever used TransferWise?
no.
Okay, I'll send you their details as well. In fact, they did a report on me 18
Okay.
months ago, and I've used them all over the world. It's absolutely minimal cost,
Oh,
and you
that's
can
nice.
change all sorts of currencies. People can pay in their own currencies, and it's no problem at all.
Oh,
I recently used them for a guy that's stuck in Thailand, and he was separated from his family and got diagnosed with motor neurone disease or something like that,
oh,
and
wow.
couldn't get home. So we got a load of donations in through TransferWise, and I think we lost about 0.5% of the overall donations that came through for him.
Okay. Wow,
So
that's amazing.
yeah, yeah, it makes it a lot easier for people to donate to you.
Yeah, I think that like when it comes to these kinds of things, it's there's always a fee. Patreon also takes a
Mm,
fee, uh,
mm,
but it just like what Patreon does offer is stability. Like I know
mm,
approximately how much I'm going to earn from that every month.
yeah,
While with solutions like PayPal, is like based on a choice that you make on the spur. Like now I'm going to send
yeah,
some help to this one person or this. So that's
yeah.
one of the really benefits of a solution like Patreon. It gives you more predictability in your finances.
Mm. Well, I think that's it. I mean, you use that as your base, and then those people that want to give one-off donations, it comes as a bonus, an added bonus.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Oh, that's a good tip.
but
Thank you.
certainly get as much money to you rather than paying it off to the corporate world.
For sure.
So,
That's
so
always been, that's always good, right?
yeah, I'll give you that detail. You'll have to remind me of all this detail I'm going to give you because I'll forget.
I'll try to keep a list, mental list.
Yeah, yeah. Samuel, I'm going to sign off now. Let you get on with your day, and I'm going to go back to removals because we're still moving house.
Yeah, yeah. Well, good luck.
But thank you very much for coming on the show, and I applaud the work you're doing. Bravo.
Thank you,
bravo.
Matt. I really appreciate the chance to come on as well, and I've had a blast. So thanks.
Good man. Good man. Well, go and enjoy your day, and we'll speak soon, buddy. Thanks very much.
You too, man. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Is Scuba Goat Under the Sea, the podcast for the inquisitive diver.